"We'll have fun with the fat girl," Outlaws shouted. Mountain Man left no survivors. "Open up, or we'll take our payment in warm flesh," the tallest outlaw roared, his boots thudding against the door until the latch screamed. Inside the one-room house on the wind-scoured Montana plain, Eleanor Ellie Brennan braced David's old shotgun across her trembling forearms. Snow hissed along the seams of the shutters. The lantern flame wobbled like a frightened eye. 6 months a widow, 2 days' ride from the nearest soul, she had learned to be her own hired hand, her own blacksmith, her own prayer. Tonight, she would have to be her own sheriff, too. The door splintered. 5 men spilled in, stinking of whiskey and horse, coats crusted with road ice. Cutter Reeves, scar down one cheek, a wolf's head tooth on a leather thong, looked her over and laughed, mean and high. "Boys, the night just turned generous. Food, whiskey, and a fat little fire to warm our bones." "The fat one'll keep us warmer," another jeered. Laughter crackled louder than the stove. Ellie sighted down the twin barrels. "Take what you need and leave," she said, voice level, because fear had frozen it that way. "One step closer, I shoot." Cutter tipped his hat like a parody of manners. "You can drop one of us, ma'am, but there are 4 more and a long night to go." The lamp popped. Somewhere far out on the white, a coyote yipped and was answered by the wind. Ellie's shoulders locked. She thought of David's grave under the cottonwood, the deed folded in her Bible, the way the sky here could swallow you whole and never burp. Cutter moved, slow and savoring. "We'll have fun with the fat girl," he crooned to his pack. "Then we'll—" A voice cut the room in half, flat and cold as iron drawn from snow. "No, you won't." Every head snapped toward the back door, quietly unlatched, now standing open to a slice of moon. In its frame stood a broad-shouldered man in a storm-dark duster, hair tied at his neck, a pale scar running from brow to cheek like a frozen river. 2 revolvers rode his hips as if they were part of his bones. Malachi Kai Darkwater stepped inside and closed the door with his boot. "5's not enough to make this interesting," he said, gaze never leaving Cutter, "but it'll do." The air inside the small farmhouse went still, the kind of stillness that comes before thunder. Cutter Reeves blinked, his smirk faltering as he recognized the man now standing a few paces away. "Darkwater," he spat, lowering his gun but not his arrogance. "You're supposed to be halfway up the Bitterroot Range, hiding from the world." Kai's eyes, deep, black, and steady, never wavered. "Not hiding," he said softly, "just waiting for scum like you to come crawling out of the dark." He moved a step closer, and something about the way he carried his body, the controlled stillness, the heavy quiet, made every man in the room take half a step back. Ellie could feel the tension crackle through the air like electricity. She didn't know him, but something about him felt both terrifying and safe. He wasn't loud like the Outlaws. He didn't need to be. The danger around him was quieter, colder, like the mountains that birthed him. Cutter raised his pistol, trying to reclaim his dominance. "There are 5 of us, Darkwater. You think you can take us all?" Kai's tone was almost conversational. "I don't think. I know." Ellie saw the smallest twitch of his hand. Then light exploded. 2 shots, clean and measured. 2 men dropped before their guns cleared their holsters. The remaining outlaws fired wildly, wood splintering around Ellie's head. She dove behind the table, heart hammering, ears ringing. In the smoke and chaos, Kai moved like a shadow, fast, low, precise, Every sound that left his revolvers was a sentence passed. When the echoes finally faded, 3 bodies lay still. Cutter and 1 man staggered toward the open door, scrambling for their horses. Kai didn't follow, not yet. He holstered 1 gun and turned to Ellie. "Stay inside," he said simply. "Lock the door behind me." Her voice shook. "You can't go after them alone." "I'm not going after them," he said, already reloading. "They'll come back. Men like that always do. I'll be waiting." He stepped out into the cold night, snow crunching beneath his boots, the moon throwing a silver halo around him. The wind swallowed the sound of his footsteps. Inside, Ellie stood frozen by the door, staring at the place where he'd been. For months, she'd prayed for protection, for a sign that she wasn't completely forgotten by God or by the world. And now, standing in her shattered doorway, with gun smoke still curling in the air, she wondered if her prayer had just been answered, in the form of a scarred mountain man who killed without hesitation, yet had spoken to her, as if her life actually mattered. The storm outside deepened, and somewhere in the darkness, 2 surviving outlaws swore vengeance on the man who had just ruined their fun. The blizzard rolled in before dawn, swallowing the world in white. Wind howled through every crack in the wooden walls like ghosts, demanding to be let in. Ellie had never heard such a sound, part storm, part beast. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the men who'd broken into her home, and behind that, the calm, brutal precision of the stranger who'd saved her. Kai Darkwater. The name alone sounded like something carved into a gravestone. Through the window, she caught glimpses of him, a dark shape moving methodically across the yard. He was reinforcing the doors, driving stakes into the snow, laying traps in the half-frozen ground. There was no panic in his movements, only purpose. When he finally came back inside, snow dusted his shoulders like ash. "They'll return," he said matter-of-fact. "Not tonight. Maybe not tomorrow. But men like that don't let go of humiliation. They'll come for revenge." Ellie's voice trembled. "You should go before they do. You don't owe me anything." Kai gave her a look that could have frozen a river. "I don't leave unfinished business. And you're not business. You're a promise." He sat by the fire cleaning his revolvers. His movements were ritualistic, almost reverent. Each bullet he checked was like a prayer. Ellie watched him quietly, her fear beginning to shift into something else. Curiosity, maybe even trust. His face was cut with old scars, and yet his hands, when they weren't gripping metal, moved with a gentleness that didn't fit his reputation. "You've killed men before," she said softly. He didn't look up. "Too many. Some I still see when I close my eyes." "And you don't regret it?" Kai paused, loading the last bullet. "Regret doesn't change what's already buried." He finally looked up at her. "But saving someone, that changes everything." For a long while, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked, the storm wailed, and in that small cabin, the silence between them grew warmer than the flames. By the 3rd day, the storm had buried the trail completely. They were snowed in, just the 2 of them, an unlikely pair bound by a circumstance and something neither could yet name. Kai spent his days chopping wood, checking snares, melting snow for water. Ellie cooked, sewed, and helped mend what she could. Every task became a small partnership, unspoken but steady. One evening, as Kai came in from the cold, she handed him a bowl of stew and smiled shyly. "You're a hard man to feed. You work like the whole world depends on you." He sat across from her, weary but grateful. "Maybe it does." he said quietly. "At least this small piece of it." They ate in silence for a while. Then, almost to herself, Ellie said, "It's strange. When I was alone, I prayed for someone to help me keep the farm alive. I didn't expect God to send a man who looks like he's wrestled with death itself." Kai's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Death and I have an understanding. It stays out of my way, and I keep finding reasons to prove it wrong." That night, as the fire dimmed and the wind pressed against the walls, Ellie lay awake listening to his breathing across the room. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. Outside, beyond the snow and silence, a pair of riders watched the house from the tree line, the two outlaws who'd escaped. Their breath smoked in the freezing air. One of them spat into the snow and whispered, "When the storm clears, we finish what we started." But inside that cabin, neither Ellie nor Kai knew that vengeance was already on its way, and that their fragile bond would soon be tested by fire and blood. When the blizzard finally broke, the mountains lay buried under a silence so thick it felt sacred. The sky stretched pale and endless, the kind of blue that only comes after violence. Inside the cabin, Ellie stirred the morning fire. The smell of coffee and smoke filled the air, curling around her like comfort. She glanced toward Kai, sitting by the window, carving a piece of pine into the shape of a bird. His movements were steady, patient, almost delicate for a man whose hands had ended so many lives. "You carve," she said, surprised. He didn't look up. "It keeps my hands busy when I can't sleep." Ellie smiled softly. "It's beautiful. You could sell those in town." "I don't go to town," he replied. "People talk too much there." She tilted her head. "And you don't like people?" Kai met her gaze. "I like the kind that don't scream when they see me." Ellie didn't look away. "Then I guess I'm one of the few." For a moment, something softened in his eyes, the faintest flicker of warmth before he turned back to his carving. Over the next week, their days fell into rhythm. Ellie cooked and cleaned, humming softly while Kai repaired the barn and chopped wood. He taught her how to mend a fence, how to recognize wolf tracks in the snow, how to shoot straight without closing one eye. "You breathe wrong," he said one afternoon, standing behind her as she aimed the shotgun. "Slow it down. Let the trigger surprise you." She felt the heat of him, solid, quiet, unshakable, close enough that she could hear the low rumble of his breath. The gun fired. The tin can tumbled from the post. Ellie turned, wide-eyed. "I hit it." Kai allowed himself a half-smile. "Told you. You just needed to stop doubting yourself." As the days passed, the fear that had ruled her life began to fade, replaced by a steady kind of strength she hadn't known she possessed. And when she caught Kai watching her, not with pity, but with respect, her heart tightened in ways she hadn't felt since before David died. One night, as they shared stew by the fire, she asked quietly, "Do you ever miss them? Your family?" Kai's jaw tightened. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, finally, "Every day. My wife and daughter were everything good in me. When they died, what was left wasn't worth saving. Until—" He stopped himself. "Until?" she prompted softly. He looked into the flames. "Until now." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with things unsaid. Ellie felt her throat tighten, tears threatening. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. His hand was large, scarred, but it didn't pull away. They stayed like that, the fire crackling, snow whispering against the glass. The pain that had once separated them began to braid itself into something new, something fragile but real. Later that night, as the wind picked up again, Kai rose and checked the traps by the door. "Get some rest," he told her. "You've done enough for today." Ellie hesitated at the doorway to her room. "Kai?" He looked up. "I know what people say about you, that you're dangerous, that you've got no heart left. But they're wrong." He didn't answer, but for a fleeting second, the ghost of a smile touched his mouth, a smile that looked almost like peace. But beyond the frozen hills, two riders still hunted, waiting for the snow to harden enough for travel. They carried vengeance in their saddlebags and the memory of a man named Darkwater who had left no survivors. And soon the peace inside that cabin would break, replaced once again by gunfire, smoke, and blood. The thaw came slow that year. Snow softened into gray slush. Creeks began to murmur under their ice crust. And for a few fleeting days, the world pretended it had forgotten violence. But Kai Darkwater never forgot. Every dawn he rode the ridge that overlooked Ellie's land, scanning the horizon for smoke or movement. The wolves had returned to the valley, and so had men who were worse. One morning, Ellie found him saddling his horse before sunrise. "You're leaving again," she said. He cinched the strap tight. "Just a short ride. I need to see if anyone's been near the property." "You've been watching the tree line for weeks," she said. "You don't have to protect me every minute." Kai looked at her, the muscles in his jaw working. "Yes, I do." Something in his tone chilled her. "Why? You already saved me." He hesitated, then exhaled hard. "Because it was my bullet that put Cutter Reeves in the ground, and his brother is still out there." Ellie went still. "Brother?" "Name's Wade Reeves," Kai said. "He's worse than Cutter, quieter, smarter. I hunted him once during the war. Should have finished the job then." The truth landed heavy between them. Ellie swallowed. "So it isn't over." "No," Kai said. "And if Wade finds out who you are, what happened here, he'll use you to get to me." Ellie folded her arms. "Then teach me to fight." He blinked, as if she'd spoken a language he hadn't heard in years. "You?" "I've spent my whole life waiting for someone to protect me," she said. "My father, then David, now you. I can't keep living that way." Kai's expression softened, not amusement, not pity, but something closer to pride. "All right," he said quietly. "You want to fight? Then you'll fight." For the next week, the small yard became a training ground. He showed her how to load and clean a rifle, how to fire from the shoulder, how to breathe steady under pressure. At first her hand shook so badly she missed every shot. But Kai never raised his voice. He simply reset the target and said, "Again." By the end of the week, the sound of her rifle echoed clean and sure across the valley. That night, over coffee, she asked him about the scar that cut across his face. He touched it absently. "Union cavalrymen caught me with a saber at Shiloh," he said. "War ended 2 days later. Bad timing." "And after the war?" He leaned back, eyes gone distant. "After the war, I was good at only one thing: killing. Men like me don't come home. We just find new wars to fight." He looked at her. "Until now." Before Ellie could answer, the distant howl of a wolf rolled down from the ridge. Kai froze. "That's not a wolf," he whispered. Seconds later came the echo, 3 short yips, 1 long, a signal. Kai stood, all motionless fury. "They're here." Ellie rose too, heart hammering. "The Reeves man?" He nodded once. "And whoever he brought with him." He crossed the room, handed her the rifle, and met her gaze. "Remember what I told you. You don't aim for warning shots. You aim to survive." Ellie gripped the gun so tight her knuckles went white. "I'm not running." Kai's mouth curved in something like a smile. "Good." Outside, hoofbeats broke the still night. Shadows moved at the edge of the yard. A voice called through the darkness, smooth, mocking, deadly. "Darkwater, you took my brother. I've come to take something of yours." Kai stepped into the doorway, gun in hand, eyes flat and cold. "You'll leave here with nothing but dirt in your teeth." The wind carried Wade Reeves's laughter through the trees. The storm had come again, not of snow this time, but of blood. The night went black as gunmetal. No stars, no moon, only the hiss of wind through the pines and the faint creak of saddles circling the house. Kai stood at the door, body rigid, every sense sharpened to the edge of a blade. Ellie crouched by the window, rifle pressed tight to her shoulder the way he'd taught her. The air smelled of pine, smoke, and fear. Wade Reeves's voice cut through the darkness. "You think you can hide behind a woman, Darkwater? You killed my brother, and now I'm here to take what's yours." Kai's voice came back, steady and deadly quiet. "You'll find out soon enough what's mine and what happens when someone tries to take it." A single shot cracked, shattering the stillness. The bullet hit the wall inches from Ellie's head, splintering wood. She didn't flinch. She breathed slow, just like he told her. Kai moved like a shadow, slipping out the back door while Ellie held her position. From somewhere behind the barn his rifle spoke once, the clean, final sound of judgment. One of the outlaws screamed, then silence. Wade cursed. "Fan out! Burn the place if you have to!" The outlaws surged forward, torches flaring like evil stars. Ellie took her shot. The first man dropped, his torch tumbling into the snow. She chambered another round, fired again, her pulse steady despite the terror clawing at her ribs. Inside her chest, something fierce and ancient stirred, not fear, not even courage. It was will, the will to live, the will to fight. Outside, Kai was already moving through the dark like a ghost. 2 more men fell before they even realized he'd changed positions. His revolvers barked once, twice, quick, precise, merciless. Then the barn went up. Fire roared to life, painting the snow blood orange. From its light, Wade appeared, stepping out from behind a wagon with a double-barreled shotgun and the twisted grin of a man who'd already decided he had nothing left to lose. "Come on out, Darkwater," Wade bellowed. "You can't kill me in the dark now." Kai stepped from behind a burning beam, eyes reflecting the flames like molten steel. "I don't need the dark to kill you," he said. The 2 men circled, predator and predator. Wade fired first, one barrel, then the other. Kai dropped behind a trough, wood splintering around him. He rolled, came up, and fired once. The sound was deafening. Wade staggered back, a black hole blooming in his chest. He dropped to his knees, mouth working soundlessly as the shotgun slipped from his hands. Kai stood over him, smoke curling from his revolver. His voice was low but steady. "Your brother died fast. You get the same mercy." Wade fell face first into the snow. The fire crackled. The storm inside Kai, the one he'd carried for years, finally went quiet. When he turned, Ellie was standing in the doorway, breath misting, rifle still in her hands. Her nightgown was torn, hair wild, face streaked with soot. "You did it," she whispered. Kai shook his head slowly. "We did it." She crossed the snow toward him, trembling. "They would have killed us both." He holstered his gun, the firelight catching the scar on his face. They almost did. But you fought like someone who's got something worth living for. Ellie's eyes shimmered. Maybe I finally do. The flames behind them began to die down, leaving only embers and the distant crackle of burning timber. In the hollow quiet that followed, Kai reached out and brushed a lock of hair from her cheek. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. "No," she said, tears in her voice. "Just tired." He nodded, his hand lingering a moment longer before dropping to his side. "Then let's rest. The dead can wait till morning." And together they walked back toward the cabin, through ash, through smoke, through the snow that had begun to fall again like forgiveness. Dawn came soft and pale, washing the blood and ash from the night before in muted gold. Smoke still curled from what was left of the barn, drifting lazily into the sky. The snow had covered the worst of it, the bodies, the footprints, even the blood. It was as if the mountain itself was trying to erase what had happened. Ellie stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in Kai's heavy coat. Her hair was loose, her hands red from scrubbing soot and smoke. She looked out over the frozen fields, quiet now, save for the cry of a distant hawk. Kai was already outside, stacking firewood, his movements slow but certain. He had cleaned his guns and washed the blood from his hands, but there was still a heaviness in his eyes, the kind that never really leaves a man who has killed, even for the right reasons. Ellie walked down the steps toward him. "You don't have to fix everything today," she said softly. Kai didn't look up. "If I stop, I start thinking, and thinking's worse than work." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe you need something better to think about." He finally looked at her. The morning light caught the scar across his cheek, and for the first time since she'd met him, it didn't look like a wound. It looked like a mark of survival. "I keep asking myself," Ellie said, "why you stayed. You could have left after that night. You didn't owe me anything." Kai rested his axe against the chopping block and wiped his hands on his coat. "I didn't stay out of debt, Ellie. I stayed because this," he gestured to the cabin, "the snow, her, feels like the first thing worth protecting in a long, long time." She stepped closer, her breath clouding in the cold. "And what happens when someone else comes? There's always someone else." He looked toward the mountains, quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Then they'll have to come through me again." Ellie shook her head, smiling through tears. "You can't fight the whole world forever, Kai." His gaze came back to her, steady, unflinching. "Then I'll fight until it's safe enough for you to stop running." She reached out and touched his hand, rough, scarred, but warm. "Maybe," she whispered, "you can stop running too." The silence that followed was gentle this time, the kind that didn't hurt. Later they sat together by the hearth. The fire burned low, crackling softly. Kai poured her coffee and said, "You ever think about starting over somewhere else? A place without ghosts?" Ellie shook her head. "This is the place without ghosts, Kai. Because you're here. Because we're still alive." Outside, snow began to fall again. Slow, tender, endless. The kind that blankets everything it touches and makes even the scars of the earth look clean. Kai reached across the small space between them and took her hand. "You're safe here," he said quietly. Ellie looked up at him, eyes shimmering in the firelight. "And you?" He hesitated, then smiled, a small, honest smile that broke through years of darkness. "For the first time in a long while, maybe I am too." The fire popped softly. The storm outside faded into nothing more than a whisper. And in the fragile warmth of that cabin, between grief and hope, between past and promise, two broken souls finally stopped running. When I tell stories like this, I'm always reminded that not every kind of love begins with flowers or smiles or easy words. Some love is born in the dark, carved from loss, tempered by danger, and made real through the quiet act of staying. Ellie Brennan was never the kind of woman the world celebrated. She was mocked, underestimated, forgotten, and yet, when the world came for her, it was her courage, her steady hands, and her unbroken heart that kept her alive. And Kai Darkwater, a man everyone called a killer, a man who had stopped believing in redemption until a woman's voice in the dark made him remember what mercy felt like. He didn't find peace because he stopped fighting. He found peace because, for the first time, he had something worth fighting for. So, wherever you are right now, maybe you're sitting in your kitchen or listening in your car or wrapped up under a blanket somewhere in the world, I want you to remember this. Even the hardest hearts can heal. Even the loneliest people can be found. And sometimes the love that saves you doesn't come gently. It arrives like a storm, tearing down everything you thought you knew, only to leave behind something stronger, something true. If you've ever believed that kindness can change a life, or that love can rebuild what pain once destroyed, then this story was meant for you. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Because somewhere out there, maybe on another mountain, another town, another heart, someone else is still waiting to be found.